Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and with me, as always, we have Steve Carroll and Matt Barocco. Evening, boys.
Evening.
Well, we've got two matches to discuss tonight, and it won't be the cheeriest of podcasts, I think it's fair to say. A draw against Sheffield United and a pretty comprehensive defeat against Stoke City. I think it's fair to say the Russell Martin era has hit a couple of speed bumps since you last joined us on this podcast. So we'll go back. First of all, Steve, we'll start with you with Sheffield United. The first time the Swans have played in front of a proper crowd at the Liberty for about a year and a half now. Before we get on to the match, what were your impressions of the day as a whole?
I think it was just great to be back down there, really, wasn't it? I was in the railway from about 5 o'clock, I think, and it was quite quiet at that time, but then it livened up. And then it was rammed, really, from about 6:30 onwards. So it was just great to see so many familiar faces. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, and I think just getting back in the ground again, there was like a certain buzz to it, wasn't there? And Daydream Believer came on. That was obviously an enjoyable moment. I think it was just great to be back in there. From my point of view, it didn't feel massively like the game was too important. It was just about being back in there and having some normality again. So, just a really good day, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed, even though, as I'm sure we'll discuss, the game wasn't exactly a classic.
Yeah, I mean, normality is the word there, Steve. From my point of view, I was amazed at just how normal it was. Arriving beforehand, going to the pub, chatting with people, going to the match. But then, Matt, I think it's fair to say the atmosphere in the stadium really let you know that, fans are back for good now. And it just felt brilliant to hear that noise again, didn't it?
Yeah, the atmosphere was great. It was no doubt helped by the fact that it was a 8 o'clock Saturday night kickoff. Thank you, Sky. That was great, because it just meant a lot of people who were already going to be buzzing for it had an opportunity to go out in the daytime and enjoy themselves, have a few drinks, as Steve said, and everyone got to the stadium in good spirits. And it took off from there, really. We've witnessed some good atmospheres down at Liberty over the years, and that was the Swansea.com stadium, I should say. Sorry. That was up there with, in terms of the feeling of being back. The whole occasion was just great, and the fans were, the 12th man, if you like, in that. It was really felt like we gave the team an extra gear, and like you say, it was always going to be a special occasion, but these circumstances surrounding the kickoff time and stuff as well just added that little bit extra.
Yeah, and Steve, we were playing against Sheffield United, a newly relegated side, and I think it's fair to say, on paper, a much more talented side than the one that we put out. But I think it's fair to say that at the very least, we matched Sheffield United, and I personally thought there were some clear steps forward there from the opening day defeat against Blackburn. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I thought we were better. I mean, I thought we kept the ball better. There were less mistakes. We didn't really gift Sheffield United a great deal of chances. I mean, they had a few, but they didn't have as many as we thought they would, really. So, yeah, I thought there were some good performances, like Ryan Manning. I thought had a good game. I thought Flynn Downs was quite good on his debut. They were definitely positive, really, as you say. I mean, we had a lot of possession, didn't we? And then obviously that restricts the opposition in terms of the harm they could do for us. The only downside was really we just did not look like scoring, did we? We're lacking a lot of creativity. It'll get towards that final third, and then we don't really know what to do, is what it feels like. And I think that's the major criticism from it. But I mean, I could see from from midfield and defence, we did actually play quite well on Saturday. So that was quite encouraging, really.
Yeah, and Matt, lack of chance creation then is something that we are going to be discussing in this podcast. And against Sheffield United, like Steve said, passed the ball around well, had the majority of the possession, but apart from one decent effort from Lowe, which he did really well to create, there wasn't much really to get excited about in the opposition third, and we could still be playing there today, and I don't think we would have broken down Sheffield United's back four. What do you think was missing from that performance, which could have given us a couple more chances to actually get the 3 points?
I think it's personnel, to be honest with you. I think, we've obviously lost a few players in the summer through loans and expired contracts and stuff. And for me, we're at least 3 starters light. There's a crying out for a number 9, someone who, we aren't looking like we're creating a great deal of chances. So those chances we do create, we need someone we know who's going to really test the keeper, not hit a tame shot right down the throat of the goal. You need really someone who's going to, snap up those chances. A 10, desperately, again, we need a creator. We need someone there who's going to sit off the front man and just drop into midfield, pick the ball, look to create that space. Essentially what, someone like Jan Danda should be, but not Jan Danda, because I don't think he's up to it. But absolutely crying out for a creative midfielder there. And a ball playing centre back. I'm talking really there. We're talking about the spine of the team. Coming through the centre of the pitch. But those are now are top of the shopping list. I think if we can get those 3 in, you'll see the ball moving out from Bender a lot more fluid. We look shaky at the back when it goes to the defenders, who haven't covered themselves in a great deal of glory over the last, certainly in the game against Stoke, but we'll come on to that in a bit. But yes, to come through the pitch, we got to be moving the ball up the field with more precision and more purpose. And when we get at the opposition, then there's got to be a little bit more incisiveness, and I think that's where those players will come in and help. It just feels like we're trying to, rebuild the squad. And that's going to take time. And this is a manager who joined days before the start of the season. He's not had the luxury of, seeing his squad first, even getting pre-season in with them. So he's doing it on the job. And, it's going to be a tough few weeks, months even, to the season before we start seeing some things come to fruition.
Before we move on to discuss Stoke, Steve, what did you think of Sheffield United? Because there were high hopes for them this season, even though they, came down pretty meekly last season, never looked like staying up in the Premier League. You look at their squad, it's full of proven Championship players, a heck of a lot of strikers there. And, a manager in Slaviša Jokanovic who knows how to get promoted from this division. But I felt they were really, really poor against us, I'll be honest, both tactically and just in terms of the quality they showed on the pitch. I was really surprised. I don't know if you feel that way, because I would have said before kickoff that a draw against Sheffield United would have been an excellent result. But having actually seen them play, I can't say I was particularly impressed by what I saw.
Yeah, I don't think I was really either. I mean, they didn't really dominate the ball as we thought they would, obviously, which we did quite well, to be fair. Like I said, they didn't create a great deal of chances either. I mean, some of the decisions they made were quite odd. I mean, obviously, we know Ryan Brewster quite well, and he seemed to be playing on the wing, didn't he, on the left? And, I can't really understand the logic in that, really. So that's sort of an example of how I think, possibly they were trying to get too many strikers into the team and then we're moving them out of position, and it just didn't work, did it? So I thought they were quite poor. I mean, they will come good, I would have thought, because they'll find a blend at some point. And I mean, as I said last week, when you're used to losing so often, it can take a little bit of time for things to turn around. So I don't think I'd be too concerned if I followed Sheffield United, but at the same time, I'd be disappointed that they haven't looked better than they have. And like I said, decisions like playing, what I would describe as a prolific goal scorer on the left wing, it's not really going to work, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. Let's move on to Stoke. So a decent point against Sheffield United was followed up, Matt, by a pretty dispiriting 3-1 defeat. And I think it's fair to say that this match highlighted just how much work we've got left to do to get this team where we wanted to be, because there was, despite what Russell Martin said, there was a major gulf in quality between the two sides on Tuesday night, wasn't there?
Yeah, it just didn't go well at all from start to finish. I think it also highlighted how a lot of our fans talk the talk, but when it comes down to it, they're all happy, and we're all happy to sit here and say, new manager, new system, let's get back to the Swansea way, and we'll get there eventually. And then, the first real performance of note, which showed those inadequacies in the squad and the transition of playing style, and you got people booing, and fucking hell, it's embarrassing. I'm sure you said, Guto, on the group chat that it was you had someone say Russell Martin out, and I just can't deal with that. I just think, like, from what we've come from over the last 2 years, this is a rebuild job on a par with what we had to do with Graham Potter. I mean, Graham Potter had an enormous job on his hands, but he had a lot of fresh blood come into the team as well, who perhaps hadn't been poisoned by the sort of football we were playing. Russell Martin's got to deal with the players who didn't have any sort of freedom in their game for the past 2 years. So I go back to the fact that he hasn't had a pre-season as well. It's so difficult. It must be impossible for him at the moment to get anything across, because every day he goes into training, at the moment at least, there's a game in 2 days' time. So we got to be talking tactics and the opposition straight away. So it wasn't a great game. From a Swans perspective, it was poor. It was, there were mistakes. It seemed like we got the first half of pass and move, but we didn't get the move. We just seemed to be very static, particularly in the first half. We had very little about us. It felt like one of those days where it was going to test us. And a lot of the fans, in fairness, were, encouraging, or at least not vocally disapproving. But one or two, I think, were a bit, very over the top, and they need to be reassessed, really, where we're at and what we're trying to do, because we are going to have more days like yesterday, absolutely, without doubt.
That's the thing, isn't it? We're not anywhere near the finished article. I was thinking about this, and I think, we've got some traits now, I think it's fair to say, Steve, that we can see from the first 3 games, and it'll be interesting to see if those are kind of teething problems and just part and parcel of learning the new style, or whether these are things that we're going to have to be concerned about long term. But at the moment, I think it's fair to say we don't know whether we can distinguish between those two at the moment, because of the situation Martin's in, arriving just before the start of the season, not having a pre-season, not really having that many opportunities on the training ground to really work on things intricately in the way that he would have wanted to. So it's very difficult to know if these are things that we're going to have to worry about long term, or if they're just things that are teething problems, and over the coming weeks we'll see them gradually improve.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, whoever got the job in less than a week before the start of the season was going to find it difficult. You can't really dispute that. I mean, it's been a very disjointed pre-season. We had a manager for 2 weeks of it, then we didn't have one up until the week before the season started. We hadn't done a great deal of transfer business. We've lost a few of our key men. We have been bringing players in, but I mean, as Matt has said, we just seem to have games constantly, don't we? So I mean, that just doesn't help either. So, as you say, I mean, we've seen certain traits that have been good, and then we didn't see particularly good ones against Stoke. Obviously, we conceded from 2 set pieces which were quite poor, and if we're honest, Stoke were really toying with us, weren't they, in the second half? It wasn't good enough. We can't really paper over that, but at the same time, we've really got to be patient. There will be games where we play poorly and lose. I think that's sort of par for the course when you want to implement the style of play like this. We've just really got to be patient, I think. But the good thing from my point of view is that it's happened at this stage where we've had a bit of a wake-up call, and we know that we're short of players in certain positions. So that should set 1 or 2 alarm bells ringing, and hopefully we'll address those issues, because this squad does need help. I mean, we're we're strong in some positions, but there's others where we're not strong. And as we've alluded to, really, the lack of creativity is a big problem at the moment. And I just don't see where the goals are coming from.
I mean, we don't know where the goals are coming from, Matt, but we're also not helping ourselves at the other end when it comes to defending, are we? I mean, we saw against Blackburn on the opening day how we gifted them chance after chance after chance, and we're lucky not to lose by more. And it was something similar against Stoke, where we were the architects of our own downfall, really. You know, you're looking at the first goal, it came from a set piece, as Steve said, but that set piece was conceded after some bizarre decision making in the way that we were trying to pass it around at the back. You know, Matt Grimes ignoring a wide open player and instead passing it back to Stephen Bender in his own 6-yard area, in an area where he clearly did not want the ball. You know, the second goal as well, just conceding it really sloppily, passing it to a player who was being extremely tightly marked in midfield when we had very few players back there to defend. One thing I wanted to ask you, I mean, Russell Martin said in his post-match interview that fitness was an issue, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with him, because I thought we looked tired towards the end of the Sheffield United game as well, and it is quite a common, thing for new managers to do when they arrive at a new club. They blame the old regime for poor fitness, and it's a standard practice. But even if it's true what he says, and the fitness isn't quite up to what he wanted, fitness isn't responsible for that kind of just poor decision making. And just needlessly putting ourselves under pressure in the first half of matches where it almost seems to be at its worst. You can't blame fitness for that, can you?
No, I think yeah, there's a lot of decision making that needs to be improved, and that'll be taught on the training ground, but also it's the execution. Sometimes I'm all for the style that he's trying to implement, and we spoke about this, I think, on the last podcast as well, about how brave he was coming in and saying in the Blackburn game, no, we're going to play like this from the off. We're not going to transition into it. We're going to play like this from day one. And we saw the drawbacks of that, if you like, where the opposition were getting chances, but also you saw the fact that this is something he's got plan A and plan A only, and that's what we're going to work on. And I think there's a lot to be commended for that, and in the sense of he's stubborn in his style. And managers who have been very successful here over the last 10, 15 years have all had that trait where they would play and play some more. And if that didn't work, they'd continue to play. There was no, hoofball in the last 10 minutes and stuff like that when you were playing with a Rodgers team or Martinez team, Laudrup team. They were very much, they had their way of playing. So I commend Russell Martin for that way. I feel like we've got a combination at the moment of the wrong players, but also the players that could be right, not having the time on the training ground to get Russell Martin's ideas into their head. 5-yard passes, not meeting their man, that's poor. That is poor, whatever level you're playing at, but you're in the Championship. You should be able to, I don't care if you're a 6'2" centre-half who's used to heading the ball 300 times a game, you should be able to pass a ball 5 yards. We're seeing these sorts of issues come up every game at the moment, where we're finding, right, okay, well, this is something that's going to have to improve because this is the way we're going to play. And there will be question marks over certain players, rightly or wrongly, that are they able to adapt over time to a certain style of play? And are they able to embrace this and become more aligned with what Russell Martin wants? Those questions will be answered through Russell Martin and through the course of time. Yeah, going back to your point, I think it's a combination of the two, Guto. I think it is poor decision making, but also poor execution of not necessarily bad decisions, just not able to, the goal you talk about the Matt Grimes pass to Bender in the 6-yard box. Well, we scored one of the goals of the season a few years ago against Ipswich, where I think Leroy Fair got the ball off Nordvelt on our goal line, and then we ended up with Selena scoring 20 seconds later at the other end of the pitch. If you got it right, and if you got it down and nailed, then you can. That is a sort of football, that high risk, high reward football, which can be profitable. And, people have shown it is profitable over time, but it's so early on. It is a lot of risk at the moment, and there's no guarantees with these players in their current state that they can pull it off.
Yeah, and Matt, the way I see it at the moment is that Martin's done well to get us sort of reasonably comfortable in possession and able to keep hold of possession. That's something we've seen over the first 3 games. There's been a big difference there compared to the Cooper era. So we've got the possession and the pass completion rates vastly improved. But that, in my eyes, is the easy job. I mean, you can teach players of this standard to just pass the ball back and forth in their own half. The difficult part then is working out how to use that possession effectively to create chances. And I think that's what's missing at the moment when we're on the front foot. I don't feel like in especially against Sheffield United and Stoke over the last week, we've not used that possession and moved that ball in a way that stretches defences particularly well.
No.
That makes life uncomfortable for the opposition. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's something which we've, under previous managers as well, we've had this complaint with the Swans that we are too passive. We get the ball and we wait for the opposition to reset almost before we try and push forward. And then I can't remember whether it was under a Clement in the Premier League or something like that, where we would move the ball then across the midfield out to the wing. In the meantime, they've set a back 4 in the box ready to head anything away that comes in, but it seemed very passive, very stagnant. And that was, going back to my earlier comment about us getting the first half of pass and move, pretty much alludes to exactly what you said there. We were all well and good passing the ball in the first half and had high percentage rates of that and of possession. And that's great, and that'll stand us in the world of good in the future. But for now, that was part bit where we were just passing the ball. But then when you were passing the ball, if you're just going to stand there, or if you're looking at the person with the ball and you're standing there, you're the easiest player on the pitch to mark. And it was just 4 or 5 of them doing the same thing every time, passing the ball, standing there waiting for something to happen. And I include I include Grimes. Go on.
So I was going to say, on top of that, when the player receives the ball, the first instinct is always to then turn and look backwards. From my point of view, it's not as if they're kind of ready to receive the ball on the half turn and ready to look forward. The instinct is always to look backwards, almost pretty much, all of the time, especially in the first half. And we're not used to it. I think again, it just comes down to just not being used to playing this football, really.
Yeah, there was a lot of guilty, incidents of that in the game. It works hand in hand at the end of the day. If a player receives a ball and you've got movement in front of you, and you've got options in front of you, you're more inclined to try and use it. But yes, there is an inclination to look. I can put a touch on this and move it backwards, and we'll keep the ball. But when you break, one of my biggest bugbears in football is when you break through midfield and then you take a touch and move backwards. I'm thinking, well, you've just undone that little moment where you caught the opposition and they've got to regroup. You've allowed them to regroup. Moments are like, especially at this level, you need to seize on them. But like I say, it's hand in hand. If a Matt Grimes or a Flynn Downs receives the ball in the middle and they want to move it forward, that is really requiring the likes ahead of them of Jamal Lowe, of Jan Danda, to actually create some space, even if it means they run wide in order to pull a centre back out of position and create a little bit of a gap for someone like Danda to run into. This will obviously come with time on the training pitch, but at the moment, you get the ball and they just play. They may as well be in the crowd with us because they were just standing there watching what was going on, and it was just easy. It was bread and butter for Sheffield, for Stoke last night. It really was.
Yeah, I thought Stoke got their tactics spot on, but having said that, I think the way we set up, it didn't really, take a genius to work out how to play against us, if I'm being honest. And they nailed it really. Steve, One player that Matt named there is Jan Danda, a player who we've been waiting a long time to kind of make the step up and show his worth as a regular in this first team. But he was given his first start by Russell Martin on Tuesday night against Stoke, and he was taken off after 40 minutes. Now Martin said that this wasn't, a reflection of his performance, but we were really struggling to create anything. We hadn't created anything all match. And his tactical change is to take off the number 10, basically the creative midfielder who's meant to be, fashioning those chances. What does that say about Danda and his place in this squad, do you think?
I think Danda's got big problems. I mean, you look at the first game where Patterson had come in the day before, and he started above Danda. I think alarm bells should have been ringing for him at that stage, really. That was pretty damning, but it was the same again, really, last night, wasn't it? I mean, Danda he's too quiet. He goes missing. He's too weak. He looks like a kid playing man's football still. That's the big problem for him. And, we can't keep saying that anymore, I don't think. And I do wonder if that could be curtains for him, to be honest. So he can do some nice things, but I just think he's better off, probably suited to a lower level than us, really. It was a damning move. I think the selection in general we were playing Fulton, Grimes and Downs behind. I mean, let's be honest, it's a pretty cautious team, isn't it? And we were going to be very reliant on Danda. So I will stick up for him a little bit in that sense that, that doesn't probably help. But at the same time, I mean, you quite often see space in like the number 10 position, and Danda would be somewhere else. And I found that quite frustrating in the first half last night. So, yeah, I think Danda long term probably doesn't have a future here, if I'm honest.
Well, one player whose time at one midfielder then whose time at Swansea came to an end in pretty unpleasant fashion a couple of years back. Not for the first time, Matt, came back to hurt us. What is it with Sam Clucas and Swansea City?
He loves it, doesn't he? I couldn't get it. I didn't hear much about, he had a little bit of a grumble at him in the first half, but I didn't hear too much booing and jeering of him. So when he scored and he gave it the big one in front of the East stand, I was furious. I was like, okay, I barely acknowledged your presence on the pitch, and I didn't hear much around me either. Maybe I'm just in the area where he wasn't kicking off as much, but he loves it, and he got. I think he got a lot of unjust stick when he left the club. I said this before. It's not his fault. We paid 16 million for him. That was just us being stupid, and actually. In the time when we had a lot of people who didn't give a fuck, excuse my language, he was one who would run. He might not have been the most talented player, but again, not his fault that we spent the money on him. He wasn't blessed with a great deal of talent, but he would run and run and run all game. So I felt like the stick he's had previously was quite unjust, but then now, he run the full length of the pitch when we played against him a couple of years ago, and now he's taking the shirt off in front of these stands. So, and to rub salt in the wound, he gets an assist then from the corner a little later on. So, absolute mess defensively. The goal itself, his goal was a shambles, and that was probably. I know that we got 2 set-piece goals, which is alarming, but that was the one that hurt me the most because he was able to just carry on walking into the area unchallenged. I mean, when you're a defender and you're backing off, and you can see the penalty spot in front of you, that you really backed off too far then. And he side foots it past Bender, and it looked like just the easiest goal in the world. So he loves it. If there's a player who will come back to haunt us every time, it seems it's that one. And it's not just the next player curse like we had. Joe Allen scored against us for them. Wilfred Boney scored against us for them. This player won't just score against us, but he'll rub our noses in it for 15 minutes afterwards as well. It's just sod's law, really, isn't it? He's had one of those days again.
Yeah, I mean, it is sod's law. He's now scored 3 goals against the Swans for Stoke, which is the same amount as he scored for Swansea when he was here. 16 million, very well spent. Personally, I don't have a problem with this celebration. Steve, do you? I mean, if you dish it out as a fan, you've got to expect to receive it. And even though there wasn't much last night in terms of abuse before he scored, mainly I think just because the crowd itself was just so kind of lethargic in general. They didn't even have the energy to boo Lucas until he scored against us. But it goes back to the way he was viewed when he was here as a player. I think he did get a lot of stick back then, especially when he left. I mean, Steve, have you got any kind of issues with the celebration?
To be honest, I don't think I have. I mean, like you say, if you dish it out and then you get it back, then it's part of the game, isn't it? We always criticise players for being robots. So yeah, one of those things. If it was if that happened against Cardiff, something like that, it probably would be far worse. But yeah, grim. And as you say, really, he's scored as many against us as for us now. It just, yeah, I mean, he took a lot of stick. Not entirely his fault. It's not his fault we spend that type of money on him, is it? It was a ridiculous deal. If you ask him one-on-one privately off the record, he'd probably say himself that he was surprised at how much we paid for him. But yeah, he's done us a few times now, hasn't he? And I suppose it just added more misery, didn't it, to what was, a very miserable night.
It was a very miserable night. The one silver lining, perhaps, was Joel Pirou's goal late on. It didn't lead to anything, but it was a good cross by Bidwell and a good header by Pirou as well. We also, over the last two games, saw two players make their first team debuts. New signings, Flynn Downs and Ethan Laird. Matt, start off with Downs. We've bought him for roughly 1.5 million, depending on who you read. A midfielder who came through the ranks at Ipswich and has come in and started two games now against Sheffield United and Stoke. What have been your early impressions of Downs?
I was really impressed them against Sheffield United in particular. I thought he was everywhere and really epitomised, how we bossed that game. I know the chances perhaps weren't created, but not really for either team. But he was a midfield general. He was the engine in the middle of the park, which I didn't realise we were lacking really, and he wasn't afraid to put himself about. So I was really impressed. I don't think anyone had a particularly good game last night, so it wouldn't be fair to single him out for that. I think it was just one of those off days against the team that will bang up for it. But no, I'm really, I'm excited. Is the players that we've brought in so far have all added something. They all look like, and I include in that Joel Pirou as well, who looks like a handful. He's scored a couple now in only in very limited time in Swans shirt, and in the highlights from the Reading game as well, you could see like he was creating a lot for himself, prepared to run at players, and last night again he was putting himself about. We were a lot more positive with him on the pitch, I think, than the 40 minutes or so beforehand, and. So, and we mentioned, Ethan Laird, which we'll come up to in a minute. But yeah, I think signings are bedding in well. And as with any manager that comes into a club and looks to bring in players, they always say the same thing. It's got to be someone that's going to improve the squad and is going to, make the team, the starting 11, stronger. And so far, so good on that front. I think the players that have come in and made their starts have all done that.
And Steve, Ethan Laird came on the second half, and I think it's fair to say he made a difference as well. And this is a position where we needed a new signing. I think Connor Roberts out for the foreseeable future anyway. It'll be a while yet until he's back in the team. I think to play the kind of football that Martin wants to play, you need your wing backs to be athletic. You need them to offer that attacking threat. And I think we saw some real potential from him when he came off the bench in the second half against Stoke.
Yeah, I think Laird was reasonably lively. I mean, he came on in bad circumstances really to make his debut, didn't he? So I didn't envy him in that sense. I mean, he put a great ball in late on, didn't he? Very late on in the game, unfortunately, there was nobody there. But yeah, I'm quite optimistic about that signing. I'm hoping now he'll play on Friday night, really, because I think that would be a big improvement for us. As you say, we need more from the wing backs really, and with Colin Roberts out, I think hopefully he'll do well for us.
And Steve, you spoke about wing-backs there. One wing-back is being linked with a move away from the Swans. Jake Bidwell, bit randomly in my opinion, being linked with Middlesbrough. Potentially £2.5 million move, if you believe what you read in stories. Would you sell Bidwell? I mean, he's been a starter in he's been a regular starter for us for the last 2 seasons. He started the first 3 games this year, set up the goal the other night against Piro, which was the only piece of real attacking quality that we saw all night. So can we really afford to get rid of Bidwell at this stage of the season?
I'd drive him if we're getting offered that money, I'll be honest with you. And Middlesbrough's a long way. With the greatest respect to Bidwell, I don't think he's good enough to play the way that Martin wants us to play. I think he's unlikely to get another year's contract that when this one expires. So if we get a good offer for him, and I would say $2.5 million is a very good offer, then yes, I would. I'd let him go. And I know we've been linked with Max Lowe as well, haven't we? So I get the impression that we're hoping maybe that a bid is going to come in for him, and we'll then look to make that change. But yeah, I think if we get a good offer, that's not something I turn down. I would go as far as to say $2.5 million for him would be the greatest sale price we've had for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And if you were to drive him up to Middlesbrough, you could then go a little bit further and have your annual night out in Newcastle. So
that goes without saying, doesn't it?
It would be a win-win from your point of view. I mean, Matt, though, in fairness, Bidwell last season, I think I'm right in saying, had more assists for us than any other player in the squad. He wasn't a world beater when he arrived here, and it's probably fair to say they still no world beater, but he did play quite a significant role at times for us last season under Steve Cooper. And like I said, against Stoke, we did see him contribute with that cross. He's not fashionable. He's not going to be one of the best players in this division. But again, are we underappreciating a player here just because he's not a fashionable name?
I think going to your original point about Jake Bidwell, he does get the assist, but I think he's the sort of player who will suit Steve Cooper style. He'll definitely suit the Neil Warnock style. So I think it would be great business for them, because I think and that's why I think we could hold out for a slightly more, because they can look at his stats last season, like you say, it's about 12 assists or something like that. He's for a left back. I know he was playing wing back, but for predominantly a left back, he's got quite eye-opening stats, and that's because he suits a certain style. He suits that style, and I don't think we're going to be playing anything like Cooper ball this season. As I think if the first 3 games have given us anything to go by, but we are going to be relying a lot on fitness and mobility. I got a feeling like our players are going to be required to exert so much more energy moving about, creating space, creating chances than they were under Cooper, which is a lot more pedestrian in style. So Bidwell is, for me, he epitomised a little bit of what we were like under Cooper. We were, how do I put this? He got the job, and he like very much happened in Cooper is he'd always get the job done. Like he's not a bad crosser of the ball at all, and he assisted last night. Great assist. And if you've got a position for him where you can put someone out on that left side and get the ball to him and just say whip him in the box, and that's the style you play in, then he's gonna come up good for you, because he's that sort of player. But is he going to, does he look anything like what we've just brought in, Ethan Laird, on the other side? He looks completely different player to me. And I got a feeling that we're going to be looking to replicate it both sides of the pitch for balance. So, look, he's a player, he's limited, Jake Bidwell. I'm not going to slag him off. I'm not, because we've had our fair share out of Bidwell in terms of productivity. But I can certainly see him being moved on. $2.5 million would be, a fantastic deal. I'm hoping it'll be above $1 million bare minimum. Hopefully, looking about $1.5 million. I would be surprised if it goes as high as the initial reported figures, but $1.5 million. would free up money, especially if we get Max Lowe in on loan, which looks like is in the pipeline potentially. Then that frees up those sorts of funds then to improve elsewhere. Because that's what we need to do, don't we? We need, as we talked earlier on about working through the spine of the team. There's players which we need to be able to get in certain positions, and that's going to include one or two leaving. And I don't think Bidwell is going to be the only player out of the starting 11. Just a hunch who may well be leaving.
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, from my point of view, I agree broadly with what the two of you have said. I've never been a massive fan of Bidwell, and I think it's fair to say that no Swansea player is ever going to say that Bidwell is their favourite player. He's that kind of player. I think he's made a decent contribution after a really slow start to his time here at the Swans, but I just don't think he lacks too many attributes for me. He's not athletic enough. He's not a brilliant footballer on the whole. He puts in a good cross, decent defensively. I think he is a decent and reliable championship quality left back. Is he any more than that? I don't personally think so. And if we were to swap him for Max Lowe, and get a bit of cash in the process, then I think that would actually be some decent business by the Swans. The other player that we have been linked with this week, Steve, it's a bit of an interesting one, really. Andre Gray, who is definitely out of favour at Watford. He's never really done it for Watford. 21 goals in 4 seasons, including just 5 in the Championship last season. But he is a player who, in the past, at least, has scored goals at this level. Do you think that it would be worth going for him? You've said that you'd want a striker, but is there an element of risk in going for a striker who's struggled so much to score goals in the last few years?
Well, possibly. I mean, yeah, like you say, he's had a good track record at this level before, maybe the last couple of years ago. For the way we've got to look at it is, we're not really in the market for proven strikers, are we? Or strikers that have been doing well recently. They cost a lot of money, so we might have to take a chance on somebody. To be honest, I think it wouldn't be a bad move, especially if it was on loan. We're not paying extravagant wages or anything. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, if we wanted to do that deal, then I wouldn't be against it, really, because we're not going to find necessarily what we're looking for. We might have to take a chance, but in the past, Andre Gray has done well at this level, so we have to trust that maybe we can get him firing again.
Yeah, what about you, Matt? Andre Gray has had a lot of stick at Watford over the last few years. Last season, he was not very popular at all among Watford fans. Damaged goods, or do you really see that there is a diamond there in somewhere underneath that dust?
I think it would be a no-brainer. I mean, if this is a loan move, and you're talking about someone who has scored goals at this level and has scored plenty of them in the past, and he's if he's available on loan, that's a low risk move. It's the sort of move that is probably, as Steve said, the best we are going to be going for. We can look at someone who we know can score goals at this level, someone who has scored goals at this level previously, but someone who's not going to cost the earth. And yeah, okay, we talk damaged goods. There's question marks over in damaged goods on and off the pitch, of course. But in terms of what you can expect from him, I think he offers you one thing. He'll offer, which we haven't got really at the moment, is he'll offer you the brain of a striker, which unfortunately we haven't had in about 18 months now at this club. Unfortunately, you've got players here who are converted into strikers and players who are perhaps more comfortable in other positions, but we just haven't had that person who has got the natural instinct of a striker. Might not work. He might be just washed up, but I think as a loan move, if Russell Martin likes him and we've done our due diligence and we're happy with it, then I've got no personal gripe against us going in for that, because he just might need a change of scene somewhere to get his hunger back for the game and stuff, and hopefully if he do move for him, he finds that here.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time the strikers, fall on hard times and then just drop down to a lesser club than a less talented team and felt got a couple of goals and then rediscovered his knack for scoring. It definitely wouldn't be the
And
first
that
time.
as well. Sorry, just quickly. So sorry on that point. Just quick point is he'll be the main man here as well, which I think is huge for strikers. To be a bit part player is sometimes going to not help strikers, but he'll know he'll be one of the first names in the team sheet just because of our limited options. And I think that sort of thing, particularly with strikers, is important.
Yeah, and he's never really been the main man at Watford because he had Troy Deeney before, and then of course players like João Pedro came through last season who kept him out as well, and he has never been that main man really at Watford, has he? Which is a good point. Let's look next up at the Swans have been praised a lot for their kit this season, which does look absolutely stunning. The home kit and the away kit. The third kit, Steve, hasn't gone down quite so well, has it? It's been released today and it's orange.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'd rather not talk about it, to be honest with you, because I don't like it. It's annoying because I think the home kit's really nice and I think the black away one is really nice. And then I think, to be honest, we don't even need a third kit. It's just a money-making ploy anyway. And it's terrible. So, yeah, can we move on?
Quickly then, we'll move on to Matt very quickly. I mean, are you going to be buying the third kit, Matt?
I'm not going to buy it. It could be worse. It could be Man City's third kit, which is an absolute atrocity. It's just training gear in it. I don't know if you've seen that. If you haven't, have a look at it.
I've seen it.
It's like a pajama set you'd buy for a 10-year-old. That's what the Man City away kit looks like.
Yeah, if you went to Turkey or somewhere like that and you went to a market stall to buy a Man City kit, they definitely have those on sale. It doesn't look like a rip-off replica that just purposely looks nothing like the actual thing. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, it's obviously you got your white, you got your black. I mean, those are the two colours of the Swans. We've even managed to throw in a blue goalkeeper kit without too much fuss from the fans. So in terms of the third kit, as Steve said, it's just money. I know the clubs don't make a great deal of money off the kits, but it is just a money-making ploy. Not really 100% sure what other angle they could have gone down. Maybe like the green and black, but ultimately it has to be significantly different to the other kits we got out. So you don't like it, you don't buy it. We probably end up playing in it every away game now just to wind Steve up. But no, apart from that, I think it's going to be one of the ones that we've got 2 out of 3 right. So yeah, we can just move on.
In fairness to the club, I think they've had a lot of praise for their kit so far this season, and they've done a really good job with the home kit. We can forgive them the fact that the third kit looks like a training kit, but we probably won't see them, Steve, wearing it on Friday when they take on Bristol City. That'll probably be too much of a kit clash. But it's going to be an interesting one, the trip to Ashton Gate. Bristol City have had a mixed start to the season, I think it's fair to say. They drew the opening game against Blackpool, went away to Middlesbrough and lost 2-1, but then the other night won 3-2 away to Reading in what was a very exciting game. And it does look like Bristol City are going to be entertaining to watch, at least this season. It's going to be very eventful. Even if we're not quite sure at which end of the table they're gonna be quite yet. I mean, is this a good game for us to be playing at the moment, do you think?
That's a good question. I don't know is the honest answer. In general, our record at Ashton Gate is bad. That doesn't give me any enthusiasm, although the only time I can remember us winning there was actually a night game, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, it's not a happy hunting ground for us. It's a derby. We will take a good following, obviously, and it'll be a good atmosphere. That should hopefully give us some sort of an advantage. I really don't know. I mean, looking at it at the moment, it just feels as if we don't want to play games almost. We almost want the manager to have more time on the training ground rather than playing every few days, which is what we've got. So yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see. I can't say I'm massively confident, to be honest with you.
Matt, what do you think we need to change at Bristol City to get ourselves clicking? Because, there are times over the first 3 games where we've looked solid enough defensively and kept the ball well, but not at any point really have we looked particularly impressive going forward, apart from the odd sporadic burst maybe against Blackburn. So what needs to change, perhaps at both ends of the pitch, to give us the best chance of winning at Ashton Gate?
Well, look, I said earlier on about, Russell Martin being very stubborn in his style, and it's commendable. And I do like the fact that he's done it. He, no matter what he says in the press, he will be acutely aware of the need to get a win on the board sooner rather than later. That's not just, because he'll have, the board breathing down his neck or anything like that, but it's also to do with the feel-good factor, the confidence of the players, the fans in the stand. I mean, the longer you go without a win, the less support you tend to get then from the stands, which then affect the games going forward. It's a vicious cycle, which is hard to break out of. So he'll want to get the win, make sure the fans are vocal on side, and if we can get the win in style, that'll be the dream for him. But I think he's going to perhaps, obviously nothing on this other than my own hunch, but I think he's going to perhaps go a little bit more back to basics for the Bristol City game to try and make sure that we give ourselves a fighting shot of winning it. And that might mean a little bit more nonsense at the back, a little bit more look, we play it out for the back, but you make sure you get that ball into Downs or Grimes quickly, rather than dallying on it between Cabanco and Brandon Cooper, etc., whereby long term we want them to do that because we want the strikers and the midfielders to pull up the pitch and create the space in behind. But that only works if your players can then pick the holes in between them, and at the moment we can't pick those passes. So maybe we just need to get the ball out of defence a little bit quicker at the moment into midfield, and then we can build from there. I got a feeling he might go a little bit back to a style which would perhaps be stepping away from his dream, but also at the same time just making sure that if Bristol City win, it's because they've done it rather than us giving it to them. A couple of personnel changes as well. I expect we'll see Ethan Laird from the start because he was a bright spark, as Steve said earlier on. And Joel Pirro, again, he's not done anything wrong when minutes he's got, and he's got a couple of goals. So, that's one thing we're badly lacking. And we'll take it from there. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see something a little bit more, a little bit less risky, if you like, at Ashton Gate.
Well, it's an interesting one because, of course, Bristol City have conceded 5 goals so far this season. They've also scored 5 goals. So it seems like they're quite an open team, and it seems like a good team to open up against if we do fancy trying to be a bit more expansive and try to push the pace a bit more. Steve, this is the first time in 10 years that we've failed to win any of our opening 3 league games. At what point do you think, we've spoken obviously about, fans maybe being a bit hypocritical, saying that they'd value performances over results, and then, of course, turning, seemingly losing patience at the first sign of bad results. At what point then does Russell Martin need to start getting a win to just calm the nerves a little bit and just settle things down a bit? Because we've had 3 games against Blackburn, Sheffield United and Stoke. I'd say personally that the games coming up against Bristol City and Preston are against weaker teams, certainly Preston, than the ones we've faced, even though I don't think any of the 3 teams we've faced have been world beaters per se, none that look likely to be challenging for automatic promotion. At what point do we say, we need a win here just to settle the nerves a bit?
It's tough to say, really, isn't it? I mean, we're not really at that stage yet. I don't think. Obviously, we could do with a win just to settle the nerves. But the phrase "must win," which I know you hated, I think we're at that point. I think, what I would say is Bristol City, they're probably not a great side. Got Preston after that; they're really struggling. And then I think we've got Hull at home after the international break. I mean, if we don't win one of those 3 games, it would be a little bit concerning because I think we haven't faced sides that are necessarily great at that point, and we haven't managed to pick up a win at all. So I think from my point of view, just want us to get that win just because it'll quieten everybody down, really, as opposed to the fact I'm actually worried. It's a bit like when you might sign a striker for a lot of money and he doesn't score the first couple of games. You're just thinking, like, just get off the mark, just because it stops becoming a major talking point then. So I think that's what we need, really. Just get that one win, and then, I think that will settle us down, and we'll be a bit, I think the fans won't panic as much then. But, the longer it goes on, the more it becomes a talking point. It's fairly inevitable, really, isn't it? But, we don't need to panic. We've just got to be patient. That's all. And, I think the time to panic might be if we haven't got a couple win by the end of the transfer window. We haven't brought anybody in forward positions, because then you'd be thinking, right, well, we haven't done a great deal results-wise, and we haven't strengthened where we need to, and then I would be concerned. But we're not at that stage yet, I don't think.
No. And for those of you, by the way, who are fearful of the Swansea City former player curse, after Sam Clucas netted against us again the other night, Bristol City have only got one former Swansea player, I think, but it is Casey Palmer who scored against us last season. So he's definitely one to watch. He's getting a rare, really, by his standards, run in the team where he does seem now to be, a first team regular, and Nigel Pearson. Let's finish off this part then with a quick prediction. Matt, we'll start with you this time around. What do you think we should expect from the visit to Ashton Gate?
Oh dear. Well, I'm not even sure what we can expect from the Swans. So it could be the sort of performance that gives you hope. It could be one that makes you watch through your fingers for multiple reasons. But I think, I'm still a little bit thinking about where the goals are going to come. But I am remain positive and say we are going to. We're going to draw this from 1-1.
Steve, what about you?
I'm not sharing that optimism, if I'm honest. Again, goal-wise, concerned. Don't know where they're coming from. After the way we defended the other day, that doesn't give me confidence either. Our record there is terrible. So 2-0 Bristol City.
Wow, this is not filling me with positivity. It's hard to say, but I think we'll see goals in the game, just because Bristol City are quite open at the back, and they do have players who can score at the other end. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Although I'd say Bristol City are probably the more likely of the two to win it, if you had to put your money on either side. And it really could be anything, if we're being honest. I think Bristol City are quite difficult to predict at the moment how exactly they're going to go, but they'll be majorly boosted from a 3-2 away win in midweek, even though it was against Reading, who themselves have been a bit up and down in the opening weeks of the season. So a bit of a mixed bag in terms of our predictions. Let's just finish off this pod by quickly looking ahead to the League Cup match against Plymouth. Steve, how seriously should we be taking this game? We got a confidence boosting three goal win against Reading in the last round. We're playing against a team from a lower division this time around, a team which we faced in pre-season just a couple of weeks back. Should we be going for this seriously to try and get another confidence boosting win, or do we need to save our resources for the league match away at Preston the weekend that follows?
It's a bit of a balance, really, isn't it? I think, a lot of the players have, maybe some of them haven't had a pre-season that have come in late. I mean, we want to be resting those, I would say. I mean, and then giving squad players a chance. I mean, I'm not against some of the first team playing, but yeah, I think the league is the priority, and that's the way that we need to look at it. In certain positions, we've got a thin squad, so we'll have to be careful. But I mean, it'd be good to see one or two youngsters get an opportunity as well. So. Yeah, I think a bit of a mixed bag, really, is how I would treat it. But, we're at home. We'd like to think we've got a good chance of winning that one, at least.
And Matt, what players would you like to see Russell Martin try out against Plymouth?
I'd like to see a lot of the, like the Dan Williams and stuff, and Carl Joseph, players like this who have either come with some sort of pedigree, but at the same time, others who look like promise from the youth team. There are players there that aren't just here to make up the numbers, and there might be something there. I know he does spend time on the training ground, but we were chatting about fitness earlier on, and I think, the pre-season games are to build up that sort of level of match fitness and match sharpness, which we had a few called off with COVID. Obviously, we had the managerial situation. I don't know quite how much time Russell Martin will have had to really fully, work with and assess everyone in his squad yet. So I think it's a good opportunity to play while still a strong team. I think there's a couple of youngsters who have looked promising, and obviously a couple of players who haven't had a fair crack of the whip yet. Players like, I don't want to see players like Jamal Lowe. I don't really want to see Jamal Lowe playing against Bristol City on the weekend, but I want to see now something different, because we know what Jamal Lowe offers. We know, obviously, we're struggling for goals at the moment, so let's try and change it up a little bit and try and give some of the players a chance to see if that they can work their way into the manager's plans.
So with that in mind, Steve, what do you think the score will be against League One Plymouth when we face them? Are they League One or League Two, actually? I can't remember. I can't actually remember.
They are League One.
They are League One, aren't they? They did stay up. What do you think the score will be?
I'm going to go 1-1 and we'll win on pens.
Wow, that's not that optimistic. I expected you then to say, "Oh yeah." I mean, we played well against Reading. I'm sure we'll do well against Plymouth. Matt, are you a bit more optimistic?
Steve's really unhappy tonight. I don't know why. I think we'll win. Really, I think we'll win. What's that?
I was going to say that Stoke match has really put Steve in a bad mood tonight.
I'm just giving you realism, lads. How I see it. I'm not saying long term is going to be bad. I'm just thinking short term pain.
Short term pain is fair. I think that's something that we all said we'd accept. Listen, people, we said we'd accept it. We need to accept it. Short term pain, but not for me. Not against Plymouth, at least. I think if we do make 3 or 4 changes, the players that'll come in will know there's a manager there who's looking for options, who's looking for answers to questions at the moment. So there's an opportunity to work their way into the plan. So any changes he does make will be players who will be really keen to impress the new manager. So I think we could see a repeat of the scoreline we had against Reading.
Would be interesting to see, wouldn't it? I mean, Plymouth. But by the way, if you're interested, have had a bit of a mixed start to the season. They've had one win, 1 draw, and 1 defeat from their opening 3 games in League One. I hope that we could beat Plymouth even with a couple of changes, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was a similar scoreline to when we faced them at Home Park a couple of weeks back, maybe 1 more goal. I'll say, the freedom of playing in the cup may get us playing with a bit more fluency in attack, and I'll go for a 3-1 win for the Swans. So that may, even if our predictions come true against Bristol City and we don't get any joy there, really, we may still have a cup run to look forward to anyway. Well, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. Sorry that hasn't been entirely cheerful. We did warn you before the season started. This could be a bumpy road with Russell Martin trying to change the Swans into the team that we all want, but we know we are quite a distance away from it too. Actually, Dan, cut that bit out. That was awful. That was absolutely shocking. I'll start again. Jesus, that was.
I think you've got it in your head now.
Don't.
Gitto's got it in his head that he can't finish a podcast, and I think he's going to play.
This is
It's
something
like that every time.
you can leave this in, Dan. We're going to redo this, but I do have in my head that I'm absolutely awful at finishing off podcasts, and I'm acutely aware of this. By the way, if anybody's listening, if Dan has left this in, I know that I cannot finish off a podcast. That I am a rambling mess when it comes to the end of podcasts. So with that in mind, thank you very much for joining us, and tune in next week. Cheers. Bye.